We have two huge Christmas games. Lamar Jackson will, of course, be a fire star, as always, but I am very worried about Patrick Mahomes in Pittsburgh. We dig into the fantasy impact of the two Christmas games, plus Thursday Night Football in today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Merry Christmas Eve to all who celebrate. If you are new here, I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
Your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com. Merry Christmas Eve to all, and hopefully you'll get a present of a fantasy football championship this week.
Yeah. So Vinny is on a cruise right now celebrating the holidays. So bear with us if there's any technology issues, but we want to help you win your fantasy championships. And there's some big games coming up on Christmas. There's a big Thursday night game as well. Lots of tough start decisions in these games that we have to get into. Before we start that, I want to let everyone know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, first game of the week. We have the Chiefs against the Steelers. Now, the Chiefs are still playing for that number one seed because the Bills were able to pull out that close win against the Patriots. So they still have to win, right? Because if they lose one, they let the Bills right back into this. But I know Mahomes had a good game this last week. He put up 23 fantasy points. I am worried, though, about him playing in Pittsburgh. Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts just put up back-to-back good fantasy days against the Steelers, but both of those games were away. Quarterbacks have not been good playing in Pittsburgh this year.
Yeah, when you look at Patrick Mahomes, look, it was a miracle that he even played last week. I don't even know how that happened. Like, high ankle sprain, everyone was panicking. It's going to be Carson Wentz. By the middle of the week, he was practicing in full. What does he do? Goes out and has a good, complete game in the win against the Texans. Now, I think Mahomes is warming up. I don't know if he just has an internal clock to say, look, I'll be okay. We'll just keep riding. Oh, it's December and January. Let me play awesome and carry my team to victory. So I am a little bit worried about the state of the Steelers defense right now. They actually had their worst fantasy game last week. They've been a consistent kind of a double-digit scorer on defense, and it was like their first real, their defense didn't play well at all game. So it's a little concerning, right, for this matchup. But I think this could have a little bit more scoring than we anticipate. So I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes lights it up, but it is interesting that he's kind of risen to the back-end QB1 status with his recent play in terms of average scoring. So he is definitely playable, but I think there's so many other guys I want to play. I like Anthony Richardson's matchup this week. I like Bo Nix. Those are some guys you could look at ahead of him easily this week. So, and I have him about mid kind of QB range, so just outside of the QB1s into the QB2. So he's definitely sittable, but for a lot of you, he might be the best option.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about him for sure. It all depends on the running game that we got from him last week. I mean, Houston was playing him in a way that they did not expect him to run because of the high ankle sprain. He proved he can still run. So we'll see if the Steelers change up the defense to not let him do that. Now, on the other side, Russell Wilson has been really, really bad without George Pickens, right? But George Pickens is expected back. He practiced fully yesterday. They'll probably have a walkthrough today, but he's expected back. With Pickens back, is Russell Wilson playable? Because we know the Steelers aren't going to be able to run against the Chiefs. So they're going to have to pass. Would you rather go with Russell Wilson or Patrick Mahomes in this game?
Oh, I don't think Russell Wilson is playable at this point. I also don't think he's playing well. On top of George Pickens not being out, I haven't seen a lot of things in the Chiefs' defense. I mean, keep in mind, they're still formidable in this game. And look, Russell Wilson might put together a couple touchdown passes, but I don't see him lighting up the Chiefs in any which way. Like, I think they could score and stay in it, but it could be a lot of field goals from both sides as well in this one. I mean, Boswell has been cranking out the field goals last week. Of course, the one was a disappointing week. So I think the Chiefs hold the Steelers to some field goals. It happens the other way as well, where you see the Chiefs settling for field goals. So I don't know if you're going to get a lot either way. I mean, I think it's going to be one of those games that goes in the 20s, but I don't think you'll see like a lot of people go off in this game, if that makes any sense. Like it'll be some scoring and moving the ball, but these defenses, these teams are too well coached in certain situations to say, okay, it's going to be a free-for-all for fantasy scoring. So I would not really want to play Mahomes or Wilson. If I can, Wilson, I'm definitely out on this week. I can see the way Mahomes has played of late, just the eye test. He's the guy who would play much rather than Wilson in this game.
I do think they're actually very, very close. They're both not going to be ranked top 12 for me. They're going to be ranked pretty closely together. It will be very interesting if Chris Jones can't play in this game, which he's trending towards not playing, or at least he's very questionable. And again, this isn't a must-win game for them. They do let the Bills back into number 1 seed territory where they can compete for it in week 18. But if Chris Jones isn't fully healthy, I don't think they'll put him out there, which makes, everyone on the Steelers a little bit more interesting, except this run game, even if Chris Jones doesn't play, I'm not trusting Najee Harris whatsoever. He's barely on the field anymore. He's not efficient, right? And he's not getting the targets. Now, Jaylen Warren has looked a little spry, right? Yeah. He's on the field more. He got a lot of targets last week. Now that may have been because they didn't have George Pickens. If I'm going to start one, it's Jaylen Warren, but that's really if I'm desperate. And then also on the Chiefs side of the ball with their running backs, Pacheco and Hunt are just hurting each other. Pacheco has been absolutely useless in fantasy since coming back. Hunt got the touchdown last week to make him a solid play. But without the touchdown, he also would have been pointless. So I don't know if any of these running backs in this game are good plays this week.
Yeah, I think I'm punting on 3 out of the 4. I'll say 75% are unplayable. Jaylen Warren, as you mentioned, I think that is a good shout because, again, when Pat Freiermuth is getting a good game as well as Warren, I think it ties to having George Pickens to stretch the field, right? So they could use Warren as the extension, quote, of the running game because you can't run traditionally on the Chiefs, and Freiermuth, the Chiefs have struggled in coverage against a tight end. So I do like Freiermuth having a better game than Travis Kelce. I like Warren having the best game of all 4 running backs, just because I think you'll see kind of the progressions, right, of Russell Wilson. We'll see if he's under pressure from Chris Jones or not, but there's George Karlaftis on the outside. So what you'll see is you'll look to Pickens deep, and if it's not there, it's going to be a lot of passes to Freiermuth, however you want to say it for Christmas, and Jaylen Warren this week trying to keep up in this game.
Yeah, so if you had to choose between Freiermuth and Travis Kelce, you'd go with Muth. I mean, at least he's more likely to come down with a touchdown, right? Kelce is not getting the yardage or touchdowns. No. Freiermuth isn't getting a lot of yardage, but he has been getting touchdowns as of late. And I think Pickens coming back actually helps him, helps out this whole offense. So I think Freiermuth might be the safer option, actually.
The matchup says Pat Freiermuth is the better play than Travis Kelce. I think Kelce might be in the mood to score a little bit. His girlfriend did grow up on a Christmas tree farm. It's going to be on Netflix, so this could help all that happen. I don't know. You need maybe a Christmas miracle from Travis Kelce. With 3 touchdowns in fantasy, he's not going to give you that. But if you need maybe 7 catches for 50 yards, he might give you that this week. So just temper expectations. Travis Kelce is not the same Travis Kelce taking over games. And Freiermuth, don't look at the names on the jersey. If you had to decide between those two, Pat is the way to go.
And then last guy here to talk about in this game, Hollywood Brown. He might be a sneaky start, right? DeAndre Hopkins isn't doing anything. He's totally touchdown or bust at this point. Brown only played 27% of the snaps in his first game back. He saw 8 targets, 4 receptions, 45 yards. It looked like he was Mahomes' go-to guy whenever he was on the field. So if those snaps increase this week, which you would expect them to, he might be a sneaky start in full PPR leagues.
Yeah, when you look at this receiving core, it's kind of been interesting the way it's developed, right? I mean, we thought, okay, they're in business with DeAndre Hopkins. He started out hot. And then it's been Xavier Worthy taking over with different plays. Like they're getting involved to kind of spark their running game. They're throwing to him deep all of a sudden. That connection that it's been a work in progress like all season long, it's starting to come to fruition here. So it's hard. Like, does Hollywood Brown just cut into what Hopkins does? And Juju Smith-Schuster is in the mix now. So it's very hard. I mean, that's the thing about this team. We mentioned that. They're spreading it around so much with Mahomes that it's hard to trust one receiver. But if I had to play one, it's Worthy. Right now, he's the guy that's producing, and he's the guy that I think Mahomes strangely trusts the most and looking for those big plays.
Interesting. I don't know if I could trust Worthy in my finals, but He does have that big play ability. All right, let's move on to the Ravens and Texans, which we know both those teams have huge big play ability. The Ravens being a lot more consistent and steady, but the Texans, they could surprise. So let's get into that right after we take a quick break. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up that W. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, who will be the first touchdown scorer of the game, the yardage that these players will have in the game, who will score, first among these teams, how many points each team will score. The list goes on and on and on. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so the second Christmas game, we get the Ravens at the Texans. Obviously, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry have brought you this far. There's no question about it. They're in your lineups. Duh. Joe Mixon, on the other hand, it seems like he's obviously going to be in your lineups because he's a big reason why you're in the playoffs, right? But at the same time, in 3 of the last 4 games, they've been massive letdowns. I mean, he's scored 8 or fewer points in 3 of the last 4 weeks. So he's dealing with the hurt injury. He's had a lot of tough matchups, and this is another very tough matchup for Joe Mixon against the Ravens, who are allowing the fewest yards per carry in the league.
Yeah, Joe Mixon to me is still the guy based on volume, but he drops into pretty significant RB2 territory for me. And I actually think Derrick Henry, just be careful. I don't think he's going to have a huge game because the Texans' run defense is pretty good as well. So keep that in mind. These guys might need a touchdown to really pay off for you this week. So Henry's much more likely to get that than Mixon in any given game. So again, Mixon could have some tough sledding here, and they need to stretch the field a little bit with CJ Stroud. It's easier to still throw on the Ravens, even though they've improved in that area. They've been stout against the run. Them and the Eagles have been lights out against the run all season long. So, yeah, I'm not really feeling Mixon to be great. Again, you need a few receptions and a touchdown for him to be even that RB2 with some upside this week. So I look at that. I think Lamar, Derrick Henry, my only concern with both of them is like how competitive are the Texans going to be in this one? Because again, it is a concern that they have Nico Collins. That could be the only thing that works in their offense. So I just look at this and say the Ravens defense also has improved since the bye. So I'm not sure if they're going to need to do a lot in this game. And that makes me worry about A, the pass catchers for the Ravens, and B, Mixon in this one.
Yeah, it does make me, Mixon might totally be, not getting a lot of rushing attempts in this game if they go down quickly. I will say with Tank Dell out now, maybe Mixon gets more targets because who steps into that role? I know they signed Deontay, they claimed Deontay Johnson on waivers, but he's not going to be ready to go right away. And I mean, he couldn't even play for the Ravens, who needed wide receivers. So we'll see who steps in. Maybe John Mechie is healthy enough to go and he can be that second wide receiver, but very different players, John Mechie and Tank Dell, right? Totally different skill sets.
Yeah.
Nico Collins obviously should be targeted like crazy. He's in your lineup.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud is not playable at all, right?
No,
even in a good matchup, even if he has a good game, cool. But like, I'm not risking it though. Yeah. He has not scored more than 16 fantasy points since week 6. And he's only scored more than 20 fantasy points one time, and that was against the Jaguars in week 4. So you're not going to go into that. Now, though, for the Ravens players, because we do expect them to be up, Zay Flowers, like he had his first good game in a long time last week, but 49 of his 100 receiving yards came on 1 reception. He, again, did not score a touchdown. Mark Andrews has been a touchdown machine. So you're playing him, right? But what about Zay Flowers?
Yeah, the interesting thing is I actually think the better tight end playing this game is on the other side. I mean, Dalton Schultz, if you're looking for someone they're going to have to use, I mean, they don't have a lot anymore. Stephon Diggs is not on the field. Tank Dell's not on the field. The Ravens struggle in covering the tight end. So Dalton Schultz might be the pivot there. But Mark Andrews, I'm a little bit concerned if he doesn't get that touchdown, he's not going to come through. The Texans have been very tough on tight ends all season long. Does he split with Isaiah Likely in this one? So what I see basically is a Lamar, Derrick Henry kind of controlling the game with the defense and maybe a few tack on field goals for Justin Tucker. So you want the Texans to be more competitive, which will help the Ravens throw more with Lamar, but you're going to have to get the touchdowns from Lamar early because, again, I don't see the Texans being all that competitive, and they don't have a lot of motivation, right? I mean, the Texans might see this team again if they play the 4-5 game and the Steelers win. Like, do they really want to do anything if they're going to see this team 2 weeks later? So all these little factors come into play late in the season. That's why we don't play into week 18 because they get even crazier than with team sitting players. But yeah, I'm looking at this and saying, look, I'm not too crazy beyond Lamar and Derrick Henry about what you're going to get this game. I mean, Schultz would be an extension desperation play if you don't have a lot at tight end. That said, if I had Andrews, I'm not going to go out and get Schultz. I'm just going to play Andrews. Yeah. But if you're hurting at tight end, I think Schultz is someone you can think about because he hasn't been great, but if he's going to be good in any matchup, it would be against Baltimore.
Yeah, it is a little bit scary for the Texans because they really don't have any. Like, they already wrapped up their division. They can move up to the 3rd seed. That's about it. And they need to go their way. And I mean, one of those things would be to beat the Ravens, but they would also need the Steelers to lose and all that. So, and do you even want to be the 3rd seed? Because there's just so many different things that can come into play. So, yeah, this game is going to be an interesting one. I do expect the Ravens to beat up on them pretty good, which could minimize what you said about Joe Mixon, and CJ Stroud probably won't have a big game. But Nico Collins, you feel good about, and then the Ravens players you feel good about as well. Zay Flowers, he's a risky one. I'm up and down about him. He's a flex play option with upside, but also risk. Let's dig into our Thursday night game. Seahawks at the Bears. Caleb Williams has, put up some touchdowns. At least he did last week. This could be an interesting game between the Seahawks and the Bears in terms of offense. We'll get into that right after we take a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Prize Picks. What is Prize Picks? Well, it's the easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks. And it's most exciting as well, whether it's football, basketball, or any of your other favorite sports. Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. What it is they give you stat projections, and you just go more or less there for each player, what you think is going to happen. With our fantasy show, we go more. We'll give you those 6-pack picks of the week on our final show of the week every week. Now you can make your own picks and win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit Prize Picks, make it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking at a lot of good stuff there. We will break it down and give you the guys to look at. We had some really good ones last week, including Jonathan Taylor, well past his 0.5 touchdowns with 3 last week. So you can look at the best matchups this week. It's quick, simple, and so much fun to challenge yourself and your friends. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game.
Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you're paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I was not using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, we got a fun game this week on Thursday Night Football. We have the Seahawks and a must-win game going to the Chicago Bears, which the Bears, they're feisty, right? I feel like there's never like a feeling where you feel like, yeah, okay, this team definitely has it in the bag. The Bears just always seem to somehow make it a game towards the end. Caleb Williams throws 3 touchdowns last week. He's up and down, or sorry, he throws 2 touchdowns last week. That was Geno Smith who threw 3 last week. He's been up and down this year, right? Some weeks you get absolutely nothing from him and it's a disaster. And then he puts up 20+ point games. I mean, he has 322 fantasy point games, at least 22 fantasy point games in 3 of the last 5 weeks. So I think if I'm choosing one between Caleb Williams and Geno Smith who to start, it's clearly Caleb Williams for me. Because Geno Smith, it's just been really, really low prior to week 16.
Yeah, unlike those games that are on Wednesday, I think this game has some shootout potential. And look, we thought the Jets-Rams game had some shootout potential last week, but this one legitimately does. The Seahawks defense, on paper, has not played very well of late. Neither is the Bears defense. They just gave up some big games. The Seahawks struggle with Sam Darnold, and the Vikings, in particular, Justin Jefferson, who we thought was going to have a big game. And you haven't had the Bears defense show up. They let Jared Goff destroy them in the cold on the road. So when you look at that, I mean, that is a formula, I think, for some scoring, as well as the way Jackson Smith, the Jigba's playing. DK Metcalf came to life. DJ Moore can do some stuff here. Keenan Allen has been producing well. On top of that all, Michelle, these are 2 very bad run defenses at this stage. I mean, you had just a lot of people smash the Seahawks of late, including Josh Jacobs. The Bears got ridiculously embarrassed by Jahmyr Gibbs. I know these are very talented backs, and Zach Charbonnet looking like he will start again, and DeAndre Swift haven't been that. But look, DeAndre Swift had a tough matchup against the Lions last week. Those revenge games did not go well for him at all. Charbonnet had to deal with the Kenneth Walker gimping around, and now Walker's hurt again. So if these 2 guys are getting the touches, I think there could be some really fun fantasy scoring all around in this game. So I'm not going to completely declare this, stamp this as play him if you got him game, but it's pretty darn close, minus the defenses in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Charbonnet is a definite play if Kenneth Walker's out, right? When he's out, he gets a lot of volume, and he's a good play. Last week he got 1 carry, ridiculous. But Mike McDonald says that he was limited last week, but he should be fully good to go on Thursday. So Charbonnet's in your lineup. I'm not touching DeAndre Swift. I don't really care if he gets the volume. He has scored more. He has hit double-digit fantasy points 1 time since week 10, right? It's been 7 points, 8 points, 8.4, 4.5, 9.4, 6.8. That week 11 game, that was his best game over the last couple months. That was 15.4. If I miss out on a 15-point game, so be it, right? I'm not risking it with him, but Zach Charbonnet all the way. Moving on to the wide receivers, though, I mean, like you mentioned, this could be a shootout. Keenan Allen has been on a roll. Like, he has been killing it with so many targets. Since week 12, he has the 2nd most targets among wide receivers, the 2nd most receiving touchdowns behind only Terry McLaurin. Like 13 and 13 targets each of the last 2 weeks. He is in your lineups. Like, Keenan Allen feels super safe. But what about DJ Moore, who's also still getting targets, but the efficiency is not there for him?
DJ Moore is the DK Metcalf of the Bears, and DK Metcalf's the DJ Moore of the Seahawks. They get paid a lot of money, but they seem to be miserable all the time. Like, they don't want to be there. Like, give me a quarterback. And then you actually did go and draft a quarterback for DJ Moore, and he's been pouting. And on the other side, Geno Smith is maybe favoring Jackson Smith and Jigba quite a bit this season. So I don't know if they're getting a little jelly here or just getting upset, because on the other hand, what's happened? Keenan Allen has been a favorite target of Caleb Williams all over the field. And when they're looking for big plays, it often goes to Rome Odunze over DJ Moore. So he's kind of caught in a bad spot, and just based on the way that Caleb is throwing the ball around, right? So the Bears can't get out of this contract. They have to get him happy and playing with him. And you look at the Seahawks, we mentioned they struggle a lot against the alpha receiver. Is DJ Moore the alpha receiver in this one? They struggle against Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. You figure DJ Moore and Keenan Allen should go off. You figure DK Metcalf might have the tougher matchup outside, and JSN goes off again because he's been awesome. So I think you play all these guys in the order that I like them. I think I kind of go JSN and Allen are a little bit more trustworthy here than Moore and Metcalf because of their usage and volume versus those other two guys, maybe a little bit big play dependent and scoring dependent in this game.
Yeah, JSN and Keenan Allen feel pretty good. But so you would go with DJ Moore over DK Metcalf?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think DK Metcalf has a better chance to score a touchdown than DJ Moore. I'll just say that. So that's how you would approach it. But again, given the track record, again, the Seahawks really struggle on the outside against number one receivers. I'll give it a slight edge to Moore over Metcalf this week.
All right. Sounds good. That is it for today's show. We hope you have a great start to your fantasy week in these 3 games. We'll be back on Thursday. We hope you all have a great Merry Christmas if you celebrate. Enjoy time with your family. And we will talk to you on Thursday to get you prepped for the rest of the week. Talk to you later. Bye, y'all.